Kings and queens wield a lot of power, and sometimes they let that power go to their heads. After all, every royal is just a human being like you or me, except for Babar, that well-dressed crown-wearing elephant. And if there's one thing that equalizes human beings, it's our drive, our need, and our love to be petty, to gossip, to peddle rumors, and to act upon our most basic instincts. And frankly, we bet Babar gossiped about whoever was feeding him peanuts too. The difference between us and royalty? When we want to be petty, we just send our group chat a text like, "Can you believe X is acting Y?" and send a GIF and then be done with it. But when a member of a royal family wants to be petty, it results in literal history being made. So, today, let's spill the tea on the pettiest kings and queens in history. But first, make sure you've subscribed to the Weird History channel. After that, leave a comment and let us know what other historical messes you want unearthed. Okay, Queen, let's dish. In the early 17th century, Maria Eleonora of Brandenburg married into the Swedish royal family, wedding King Gustavus Adolphus, whose name sounds like someone trying to make up the most European name possible on the spot. Hey, it's tough to do. And in 1626, the new Queen Maria bore her new husband a daughter. And while folks present for the birth initially thought the child was a boy, King Gustavus was thrilled with the confusion, stating, "She is going to be clever, for she has taken us all in." But for Queen Maria, her new daughter was too clever by half. She reportedly shouted, "Instead of a son, I'm given a daughter, dark and ugly, with a great nose and black eyes. Take her from me. I will not have such a monster." We shouldn't judge Queen Maria for her reaction, because based on her description, she gave birth to a shark. After being rejected by her mother so forcefully that her future therapist's wallet exploded, the little princess nearly perished twice. Once when a ceiling beam fell on her cradle, and another time when she fell down the stairs. Some even believe Maria Eleonora was behind the attempts on her daughter's life, which is harsh. At least wait for her to grow up and start dating someone you don't like. Like many royal hubbies, King George IV of the UK did not get along with his wife, Caroline. Unlike other royal hubbies, King George knew aggressively quickly, marrying Caroline in 1795 and spending only 2 nights together before separating. Even the couples on Married at First Sight had a better foundation. George spent years trying to divorce Caroline after their 2 days of marriage. But the only legal grounds for divorce were proving that she committed adultery, which is difficult given the literal 2 days of it all, even for Johnny Cochran. And when George's plots to put his wife on trial for adultery failed, he resorted to the petty player's nuclear option, public humiliation. In 1820, when George became king, he literally had his wife, Caroline, bounced out of his coronation. When Caroline showed up, the guards at the door rejected her for not having a ticket. And here, unfortunately, the "Do you know who I am?" play probably wouldn't have worked, because the guards would have answered, yeah. After this aggressive move from King George, Queen Caroline suddenly passed away only 3 weeks later, which, in a sense, is the pettiest retaliation possible. Advantage? Caroline. When you think of the Victorian era, you think of industrialization, fancy clothes, and servants hanging out downstairs like Gosford Park. Apparently, you should add one other item to that list: pettiness served cold. Queen Victoria, the era-namer herself, had 9 children, particularly relying on her daughter Beatrice as a companion and confidant. In fact, she relied on her bestie daughter so much so that even as her other children got married, Victoria insisted Beatrice stay single. But the heart wants what the heart wants. And Beatrice found Prince Henry of Battenberg, who began to court the young princess. Victoria, being the understanding mother she was, objected strongly to this relationship. And when Beatrice announced her intent to marry Prince Henry, Victoria straight up stopped talking to her daughter, only communicating with her by note for months on end. At least that's one less toast at the wedding. In 1589, King James VI of Scotland sailed to Scandinavia to marry Anne of Denmark. On their way home, a storm nearly sank the ship. They just narrowly missed a frozen. But instead of blaming funky weather patterns or the earliest symptoms of climate change, King James took the very reasonable position of screaming, "Witches!" That's right. King James became convinced magical witches were trying to sabotage his new marriage. So instead of spending time with his new bride, King James and his weirdo cronies rounded up over 70 people, accused them of being witches, interrogated them, and even resorted to torture. So the next time someone tells you a horror story about how it rained the whole time on our honeymoon, remind them that it was probably just the weather, and not a vindictive coven of spellcasters. King Peter III of Russia was a totally normal dude and very chill king, which is a statement that should make you immediately suspicious if you've ever seen a Weird History episode before. As an adult ruler of a ginormous geopolitical power, Peter loved playing with toy soldiers, especially at night before bed. For many of his royal duties, he'd pass the buck to his wife Catherine, who would, among other things, don military uniforms and carry out drills so her powerful husband could keep up his playful rituals. Sort of the old-timey Russian equivalent of the boyfriend playing Fortnite, while the girlfriend pays the internet bill. And then, tragedy struck King Peter's fake battlefield. A rat had the audacity to chew through one of his toy soldiers. Understandably, the king was furious, and he put the rat on trial. Seriously, we're not making that up. Despite the mouse's robust defense, we heard he hired Stuart Little as counsel. The king declared the rodent guilty and had a miniature gallows built to hang the convicted crook. We imagine the executioner had trouble keeping a straight face, unless the executioner was a mouse in a tiny hood. In fairness, both the trial and sentencing seem to have taken place entirely within Peter's bedroom. But that doesn't exactly make it better. Sometime after this bite-sized court case, Catherine realized that her husband, the king, was most likely out of his mind, because heads of state generally do not have rodents executed for breaking their toys. She removed him from power, taking control of Russia and becoming the famed ruler Catherine the Great. She even inspired an FX series that is, well, pretty great. Xerxes the Great ruled over one of the most powerful empires in history. After all, how many ancient kingdoms inspired a Zack Snyder film? Not counting Las Vegas. But even the Persian king wasn't above moments of pettiness. According to the Greek historian Herodotus, Xerxes showed off his royal temper when his plans to invade Greece failed. Standing at the Hellespont where a Persian bridge had collapsed, Xerxes didn't cry, complain, or ask to speak harshly to the architect who designed the bridge. Instead, he ordered his men to whip the water in retribution. As his troops gave the water 300 lashes, they cried out, "Bitter water! Our master thus punishes you, because you did him wrong, though he had done you none. Xerxes the king will pass over you, whether you want it or not. In accordance with justice, no one offers you sacrifice, for you are a turbid and briny river." Turbid and briny? Damn, Xerxes. The water would never recover. England's King Edward II was, based on most historical records, quite homosexual. But to maintain a sense of participation in society's mores, King Edward was entered into an arranged marriage with Isabella of France, daughter of King Philip IV, to try to assuage tensions between the two European countries. Like most arranged marriages, it was extremely romantic. The problem was, King Edward already had a love of his life, and his name was Piers Gaveston, 1st Earl of Cornwall, and constant confidant to the king. So when Edward and Isabella were married in 1308, in the bitter English cold of February, the king puckered his lips and kissed Piers in front of a confused and hurt Isabella, in front of the entire royal court. The historical record is unclear on whether a World Star video then broke out. King Edward went on to spurn his new wife by giving Piers money and jewels originally promised to her. And as Piers kept on racking up gossip-spreading enemies, Queen Isabella being chief among them, King Edward continued to keep him in his retinue as more than just his favorite. Unlike his dim-witted depiction in Braveheart, he was pretty shrewd and a master of pettiness. Clovis was the first king of France. And with great power comes great responsibility. Yeah, just kidding. He was so unbelievably petty, it'll make you scream, "Sacre bleu!" In the 5th century, King Clovis pillaged a lot of churches, which was a common hobby at the time. At one of those churches, Clovis took a vase, or vase, depending on how many of them you have in your house. And when one of his followers committed the egregious sin of smashing the vase, Clovis got his revenge, or revanche. According to the medieval chronicler Gregory of Tours, who sounds like a LARPer half-assing it, King Clovis held a grudge for an entire year after witnessing his soldier smash the vase with his axe. 365 days after the event, Clovis walked up to the soldier and said, "No one bears his arms so clumsily as thou," then snatched the soldier's axe and chucked it to the ground. And when the soldier bent over to pick up his weapon, Clovis continued, "Thus didst thou to the vase at Soissons," and swung his own axe directly into the soldier's head. He held that grudge for an entire year. That's Olympic-level pettiness. But also, couldn't you just have bought a new vase? Today, many remember Ramses II as one of ancient Egypt's most powerful rulers. But that might be because Ramses simply took credit for other people's monuments. Hey, if you can't beat him, tell him you did it in the first place. Ramses became pharaoh in 1279 BCE. And from the jump, he wanted to distinguish himself from his father, the pharaoh Seti I. He moved his royal court to the city named after himself, Pyramus, leaving Thebes behind. And he also renovated several monuments, which in this case meant putting his own name on the buildings and statues constructed by his predecessors. Like walking into a bookstore and covering up every Stephen King title with a post-it note of your own name. Ramses II basically worked through his daddy issues by physically removing his father's name from several structures and stamping his own on top. Because history is written by the winners, or just the people who got there last. So what do you think? Which of these acts of pettiness was the most savage? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from our weird history.